Okay.
Like, we're in. No intro
We're
tonight.
in.
I
No
haven't done this
intro.
in so long. I forgot to hit the button for the intro music. You know, the dun, 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 dun. So
It's just the Power Brokers tonight. You know,
exactly. Well, the cream of
the
the
two
crop,
puppet
as I like to say.
masters.
Yeah. Well, it's the talent. Let's be honest. The real brains behind the throne. Yeah.
Actually,
So I
those
haven't
were new
talked.
masters, mate.
You got like an episode out last week that like has gotten a lot of interesting discussion going.
Well, I'll tell you what's interesting to me is that it was nowhere near as bad as what I expected.
Oh, you were expecting some flack, like because of
Yeah,
what armies you chose.
Yeah, I was expecting it to be a fair bit of negative. Oh well, like as in people not agreeing, right?
Yeah.
But there's actually been very minimal of that, and if there's been any, it's been over Men versus Rortia. But I think
And
a
by the
few
way,
people,
you're wrong on that, and we can
yeah.
get into that later.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But I think people also kind of missed the point that I was saying that like it's not about eliminate one of those. One of those essentially
No,
becomes
you still combine
a
them.
bigger
They're
one.
still there.
Yeah. So we don't take away that gateway for people. It just looks like something else, right? And
Exactly.
or it could not be Rortia, it could be completely named something else altogether. That's Taylor Gwilliam. G'day,
Hey, Taylor, my man.
Taylor.
This guy, I hope you're feeling better because I have not kicked your ass in King's War in a long time. So I'm hoping you're feeling up to it. You better be there Wednesday because Kingdoms of Men are itching to stomp some Abyssal Dwarves. So just saying.
So it was mostly that. And otherwise, I wouldn't have thought, I don't think there was a bunch of negative stuff that you could clump together in terms of one thing. That was probably the most common thread. I think there was also a little bit of a misconception. I mean, I did say it that I think that part of the reason we want to drop down the numbers about that's Steve Foster. Always ducking you, Steve. Always.
I would. He's filthy.
Yeah, filthy. I know that abyssal filth. Yes, from a playtesting point of view, I think it's important, but I think the bigger issue is that Mantic need to produce minis for their armies.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, if they're not making minis, they're not making money, right? They've got to make
and with 29 armies, that's hard to do. They're never going to catch up, ever.
No. Yeah.
So
it's interesting. It's interesting. We got a lot to talk about tonight. Maybe before we get to all the good topics, what have you been painting? What have you been modeling? What have you been hobbying?
Last week, nothing. I'm a bit wrecked actually, but I've still got the EJs on my desk. Grenadiers.
How are they coming out? They're looking good, tasty.
Yeah, good. I've just about secured a little space at work where I should be able to move my printer because I haven't been able to base them.
Are you gonna have to like put it next to where you have your gaming PC or?
No. So I've got one gaming PC here at work now and one at home.
You're not going to get any painting done now. Total War is going to take up all your time.
Oh, Total War is taking up my time. So good. Immortal Empire.
I won't buy it because I am obsessive compulsive, and I know if I buy it, I will not get any work done. Because I mean, I got to be banging out. I got to be painting models, man.
And they've got like now on the Immortal Empires, they've got like 4 different campaign victories you can do. It's like short, long, domination, ultimate.
Hello. Really?
That's Jimmy Livers, yeah. So
hey Jimmy,
is basically
great. It looked like it was a good turnout at the Wildcat GT this weekend. It looked like a lot of fun. Next year.
I didn't get an invite.
Well, if you come over to the United States, you can be my partner. We'll play doubles on Friday and singles Saturday, Sunday.
So I'm hoping to get a space here at work. I've emailed the agent and say that we can have our couple of printers there because I need to print the pieces for the bases because I'm printing the halfling terrain stuff from Printable Scenery. So I can't really base the guys up until I've got that done.
You refresh your memory? Printable Scenery, is it the halfling houses like the Shire?
Yeah, they've got style? It's Shire style, and they've got like little carts that effectively shops. Okay. So
have you emailed Kawe and asked if he? I think he still has the STL files for the Halfling House fronts that you can 3D print that are amazing.
Cool. Yeah, I should email him.
Email him. Yeah, because I know. Let me grab one. I use them for basing.
I might go to his website now, actually.
Yeah, I was on his website. I didn't see them, but with Kawe, you just email him and say, "Hey, dude, I know you're crazy. So what do you got?" So this is, and actually I didn't print these. He printed these for me. So that's one of them, right? And what's cool is you could make. I've got a few extras, so I'm gonna make terrain out of it. But obviously, this is an unfinished base that I'm working on now.
Yeah.
By the way, let me show. So I've been painting up these little buggers, man. These cultists. It's probably not gonna come on very good. They're like little.
Oh yeah. The ones.
So we had a long discussion why they're not painted white.
Yeah.
If you're from America, you know why they're not painted white. Number one,
I think if from anywhere in the world,
super hard to paint white. Right, that many robes would be ridiculous. Number two, there's a So what's interesting is I've got 29 painted, and so this is what I got. I've got this is what it looks like right now. And there's 7 more guys of that different pose to go on. And then on this rock over here, there's going to be a dude with a book that's got like entrails, which is going to push me to 30 models. And for model count on Fanatics, I'm like, yeah. And because I am
because they're small, it doesn't even look crowded.
No, I know. Well, here's the crazy part. Look at this profile. Look at the base. Like half of it is or better shot. Look at that. Look at how much of the base is the freaking rocks.
Which is cool, right? Because with that army, that has allowed you that creativity.
Yeah.
And still the ability to do PMC.
And this is a new one for me because I actually have a cave. So like you can't really tell, but like it's modeled on the inside of the cave and all painted. So I've been working on that. And then I rebased these guys. I was originally gonna I had these 4 knights and I'm like, they were on a troop base. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna add 3 more knights to it. But these knights are painted to a very high standard, and I don't think I want to have to try to match that paint job. No. So I'm just gonna
even that lance would take so long.
Well, the lance does take a while. You basically take a strip of painter's tape, you mask, you snip yourself like a 16th or a 32nd in, with a ruler, and you cut it, and then you just stripe the thing, and you paint it white, and then you stripe it, and then you paint the exposed areas blue, and you highlight it up, and then when you pull it out, then you go back and highlight the white, and it takes forever. So they're gonna stay here. I might add another troop to go in the front, right, and have 3 or 4. So I have 2 troops. So now I've got 2 regiments of knights. I've got a troop of knights. I painted some mountain sergeants too, and then I still have this guy to paint, which I think I've already shown this. This is a 3D printed. It's called a Fey Dragon. So what I was looking for is something that's a lot smaller than number one. This is going in a battle foam case. I don't have 20 inches to spare for one model, so I'm being very judicious of okay, this is 5 inches tall. So I've already had to waste an extra inch on army, which is 4 inches tall. All the basing is the same height. And so I'm it's 5 inches tall. That's good enough. It has a salamander head that's not on there right now, but it's gonna be cool. I'm looking forward to it. It's gonna have the wings like I painted on the Griffin. Somebody had asked me too. They saw this. So this is a paint handle from Wrathcore that I'm in love with, dude. It's super simple. It's literally like a wooden CNC ring that has a cork inner, and it's split. So if you have a model with a slotted base, you just leave the tab on their feet, clip it down, push it in. Or if you're gonna peg it, you can just peg to the corrugated. Love it, dude. And so I've got 10 of those. So, and I think I've told you, I've kind of moved away from the smaller sizes. Now I'm doing between 5 and 10 models at a time, just trying to speed things up. So, lots of paint, man. Michigan GT's coming up. Lots of paint.
Yeah. Carway's already got back to me.
He's amazing, dude.
Yeah.
What did he say?
So, no, so I just reached out. So it's on his, so he's got a My Mini Factory page. So that's what I went to the website and couldn't find it. And so, and it's pretty good, man. $5 for the STL.
Which is it just one of them or is it all 3 or 4? Because I think there's multiples of these.
Halfling. So they're called sets. So let's just have a look.
I think there's
so each one is $5. Yeah, each one is $5. That's nothing.
Is that $5 Australian?
No, it's probably US, but
okay,
doesn't matter.
Still though, what I like about these, they're very flat on the back, and so you can just embed them into a hill, or into a rocky texture, right?
Yeah. So for anyone that wants to know, it's for some reason he doesn't call it Westphalia. It's called One Gold Piece.
Yeah, so that's his
Online
Patreon for 3D printing. One
Got it.
gold piece is the 3. So Westphalia Miniatures, you go there, you buy resin models, right?
Yep.
Which last time I looked, like most of the halflings aren't on there anymore. I think he had some issue
No.
with the person that made them. I don't know. Long story short, we might not see those guys again. Now, luckily,
No.
I have.
Well,
a
I mean,
stash.
lucky you've got. Yeah. Well, plus
I have a stash.
he can release them as STLs, right? So
Well, they're not. They're sculpted. The halflings are all sculpted traditionally, so they're green stuff.
oh,
Now he has halflings that he had sculpted digitally, like the Mandalorian ones,
which are on the one.
which
gold
are on the
piece
one
store.
gold piece. Yeah.
Got it.
His stuff is fantastic. I would highly recommend if you need like a really unique barbarian or something for a D&D session or a monster, go check out his site. He's got some cool shit, man. And like, no one's more passionate than Kawe. No one.
And the cool thing about this, right, is like, so I'm looking at the halflings and he's selling them from anywhere from $1 to $3 for the file, right? That is a classic case of how an STL can work to still make you money, right? Because $3 a model, like, is up there with, you know, what you might pay for a very good quality infantry model, right?
Yeah.
He's sending it just for the file.
Yeah.
So
well, and they're worth it. His digital sculpture.
Yeah, I reckon.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah, I reckon. I don't think that's expensive, and I think it's a great business model.
Yeah. So, what do we got to talk about tonight? We had a couple ideas floating around, and obviously we could continue that chat about which armies need to be consolidated. But let's talk about theme, specifically like which models you use for that theme, and is there a line that you cross where it's like, okay, you're offensive, or you're gonna hurt someone's feelings, or is there a spot where you can make an army that's just really shouldn't exist? So I'm going to throw it over to you, Matt. What do you think?
Well, a classic case would be is if you painted those white, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
if these guys were white, I would be a dead man. I would be a dead man, right? Like, yeah.
And look, honestly, rightfully so.
Well, and here's the thing. So Kyle said, well, you should have like a burning effigy. Like on the, I was like, no. I was like, no. I was like, that's no, it's too close.
Getting too close. Even if it's not white, it's getting too close. I
want fantasy. I want these guys to look like fanatics. And the reason why they're fanatical is because that's why they're dressed in the robes. But yeah. You're right though. If these guys were white,
I mean, and that's one that's not borderline. So I guess where we get to things like so I guess the thing is that we are a very broad group, right? And some people will find things offensive and some people won't. So there's a question within
it's like personal taste.
Potentially to be asked, personal taste, right? Which is fine, but within a wider gaming community, is that personal taste acceptable when it could offend others? Yeah. And the same, I mean, it's actually a very charged conversation, because you can say that in terms of like that leads into bigger conversations about the way you talk about things, right? The language you use when you're talking about things. But a classic case would be recently I did have this. I had a mate recently whose kid was going to work at a gaming convention, but some of the stuff was very nude, right? And this kid wasn't comfortable selling it. And so what if we had armies representing that in some way, and there are people that are made uncomfortable by that. I just think that's an interesting conversation.
Yeah. We do have a question here. Does he do have? He has a lot of halflings, but really his newer thing is just adventurers. And he did a big campaign for this German role playing game. I think it's called the Dark Eye, which it was pretty popular. So like officially licensed Dark Eye miniatures. But he's got all kinds of clerics and bards and you name it. So
yeah. He's got. And I'm sure he'll do more over time, right?
He will. And
he'd be definitely one to keep an eye on. And I reckon looking at his stuff, awesome for D&D campaign stuff. Like sign
Yeah,
up
I mean
to the
that's what it's
Patreon
really made for.
and he'll
And
release stuff that
he's a D&D
Mm.
nut himself, right? And if you go on the Westphalia page, there's usually a discussion about D&D. And like right now is D&D 1, I don't know, there's some kind of new D&D that's coming out that's usurping maybe some of the electronic add-ons from other companies or something, and he was bitching about that. So he's very opinionated, and he's very entertaining. You ever get a chance to talk, because he's a German who lived in England and has now relocated to Canada. So
yeah, right.
He's been around the world. Yeah. But to your point, you know, that's interesting that, you know, someone might, you know, from a sales perspective, some of those models, I'm thinking like back in the day of like Slanesh, right? Some of those models were very risque, and I can imagine somebody might not be comfortable selling that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I have no issue.
Yeah,
like I wouldn't probably choose to buy them, but like I have no problem playing against them, looking at them, anything like that. I'm happy with that. But the question is if there's someone that is, you know, what is there a line that's crossed or not? Like, is it should you be allowed to build what you want as long as it's not obviously offensive? Like, if it's debatable, right? Should you be allowed to do it? Whereas, you know, what we talked about first with the white cloaks is absolutely not debatable.
Yeah, there's no question. Yeah. The question that we got, you know, have we ever encountered an army that offended you or just I've never really been offended, but like I have a 13-year-old daughter, and so I'm always in the back of my mind, like, would I show Army this army, right? And there are lots of armies I wouldn't show, like either just the wrong image of women is the best way I can describe it, right? Like, I don't want to get into details, but like there's some really outlandish armies out there that not to say it's not within your right to do it, but what I would say, maybe a little cautionary tale, is if you're going to be playing this stuff in public, you do need to be paying attention. You know, if you're playing at your house, it doesn't really matter, right? It's just you and whoever you invite over, and it's your rules. But if you're playing like at a game store, you know, just be wary that there's going to be there potentially could be lots of kids there. And, you know,
well, and potentially that you have to be prepared that someone might have a problem with it.
Yeah.
So, and that same someone might actually say something to you. So, which, you know, is their right to do so. The interesting thing is if you change it up, and so this is part of the problem of, you know, having what is a majority male dominated hobby, right? If you changed it up and one of our female compatriots painted that army, it's probably not a problem. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's, yeah, I think it's just, it ties into the wider issues of probably objectivism in you know, in society and where we've come from and where we're moving to. Whereas I'm probably a little bit different. I'm less likely probably to expose my daughters to some of the language we use around.
Well, that's a good point too, right?
Gaming groups, you know.
Whether
it's you know, poor language or just the way we talk about things, you know. And I'm saying we because I would have totally been
the royal we
myself.
No,
like I am certainly not faultless to do with anything, you know. But it's interesting. Yeah, I do wonder, and I don't think those armies should be banned at all, but I do think those people probably have to be prepared that people might make comments to them, and at that point, it's probably on you that you don't get overly offended by it because their opinion is also valid, you know, because that's what
if you choose to bring it into a public space, right? Like, then you kind of you're bringing, I don't want to say you're bringing it onto yourself, but you're taking on that risk, right, of confrontation or you know, other people's opinions. So,
but it's funny. Back to the comment. I'm just going to say, I can't. Maybe I'll close that window. I'll reopen a new window so I can see who asked that question.
That'd be great. And as a reminder, make sure you allow Facebook access to StreamYard so we can see your name.
Yeah, but Yeah, the thing is, so it was Taylor again. The thing for the answer to the question is no.
Well, Taylor,
I
your
haven't seen
army's
an
very
army.
offensive because it's painted like crap. No, but
It's offensive because it's Abyssal Dwarfs.
it's Abyssal Dwarves. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all defense 6.
Mm. No, I haven't. Like offensive, like because offensive can also be multiple ways, right? It's like the My Little Pony armies.
Well,
or
I was just gonna take us that direction, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm much more inclined.
Let's go down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, I'm much more inclined to be offended when you have someone taking a shit on us, right? Let's be honest. Let's call it for what it is. If you put effort into something, you can make something beautiful. But if you put in no effort, then I don't know. Like, and we say the My Little Pony army, that's one example. But I've seen the Minions army. There's lots and lots of examples.
And I don't mind
put in the effort.
things. Yeah, I don't mind themed things like that. But you need to be able to look at the table, and if someone tells you what the list is, know exactly what each is. Right?
There was a Minion army in Warhammer. And it was done by Domus, and I love the guy, but why would you bring this? It was literally a bunch of minion units, and it was a doubles event. Half of them are supposed to be Skaven, and the other half are supposed to be Chaos Dwarves, and they all look the same. Like, well, they were modeled differently, but they had like little flags that said, "I am Warlocks," or I don't know, whatever. I don't remember. And like, I don't know. You know what?
That doesn't work for me. You want to run something as a beast of nature. Well, then it has to be the right size and have wings. If you want to ride something as large infantry versus small infantry, well, at the very least, it has to have a size.
You want to know what pushes my buttons? Don't show up with a damn dragon and go, oh, "This is a horde of knights." No, it's a dragon. It's a dragon. I'm gonna flip the table on you. Like, that drives me crazy. I get why people do it. I'm a great painter. I'm too lazy to paint the whole unit. So I'm just going to paint one big model. No, that's a model.
Yeah. And I don't, and I don't mind it with like things like where it's multiple larger models, right, on a base. But yeah, something like that just smacks of being a bit stupid,
Yeah. Well,
particularly with 3D printing, you might see something like you often see lots of different things representing chariots, right? So in orc lists, you'll see the big Arachnarok. Yeah, I don't mind that.
No,
I don't mind that.
I can. It's plausible, and that maybe takes me to my next thing. We're talking about like offensive, but like theme in general is an acquired thing, and I will say I am probably the most conservative or traditional person for theme out there. Like, I'm not making a Harry Potter army. Sorry, dude. Like in my mind, like I have to have a story that makes my army fit into the universe in which it's playing. So like this Kingdoms of Men army is from this. I have a whole background story. It's from the village of Fordern to the Dragon Teeth Mountains. They're miners. They protect the trade route. There's a whole thing, and like in my mind, there's a story there. But if I was to try and convey that story to like, hey, this is my Frozen army, and Elsa is the queen. Like, for me, this is gonna sound stupid, maybe, but it breaks my immersion. Like, as soon as I see goofy stuff like Monty Python and the Holy Grail, Killer Bunnies, I'm like, that's not Kings of War. That's
I find that really interesting because I think so.
But I get people, yeah.
My thing is most of the time it's not done that well, right? I've got a mate that really wants to do a Kingdoms of Men army, so at least it's Kingdoms of Men, right? So, but in the style of the Discworld novels. So take stuff from Discworld and have like Rincewind is one of the wizards and can ride things, and so like
I've actually never read the book, so I'm gonna take your word for it.
Yeah. So I think probably much more British thing.
Well, what's interesting is your friend, Atlantis Miniatures, who is now Blue Giant Miniatures, they're a 3D company now, makes Discworld models.
Do they? I didn't know that.
And they also are making some from Gary Chalk. So some of the old
because
I'll find a link.
Well, I can, I mean, the interesting thing we were discussing about it is, are they even allowed to? Certain ones You know, can they call themselves Discworld models? I don't know. Like, where does trademarking start and end when it comes to 3D printing? Because there's no look of things.
Well, I was saying in the case
that's
of Blue Giant,
copyrighted, right?
they're all
just a
officially
character.
licensed stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Interesting. Is it Blue Giant? I'm Googling them and they're not coming up.
That's what it's called.
Miniatures.
And I've got it. It's bluegiantstudios.co.uk. I'm looking to see. I thought they
Got it.
had some models, but I'm old, dude. So it's very possible I'm mixing
Yeah, you are, boy.
mixing up stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm old. I'll be 49 this year, so
Wow.
hey, let me see.
Yeah,
Let me
I
also
can't
check
see it
that.
immediately, but yeah.
I'll find them. Yeah, I mean, to your point though, I'm also somebody that you mentioned, like IP. Like I'm gonna be legit. Like I'm gonna like if I want to do if I wanted to do what you just described, I'm gonna try to find some officially licensed models. Right? I don't know. There's
yes, yeah, and I have a real problem. This is a massive problem for me in the STL community. I loathe seeing models that are obviously a knockoff of someone else's product. I loathe it, and you see it with mostly the GW stuff, right?
Well, there's there's Facebook pages just for it.
Yeah. I'm not talking about theme. I'm not talking like Woodland Elves or things like that. I'm talking about where basically, a Sister of the Thorn looks like a Sister of the Thorn. Do you know what I mean? Like from the old Wood Elf range, where the Tree Man is basically one branch away from the Durthu model that they used to sell, or that grinds my gears, because companies do have a right to protection of their own stuff.
Mm-hmm. Dementia, it's always with me. Yeah, they have a handler.
Yeah, so interesting. I had a quick look the other day to see if I could start printing it for him, but I didn't find anything immediately. But like, it'd be cool if there's some official miniatures. I would love that. I found some on My Mini Factory when you type it in, and then maybe if they're doing, because Blue Giant is still selling models, aren't they? They're not.
They are, but they're mostly selling the STLs now. And I'm looking at they're doing Fighting Fantasy, and I guess I'm getting confused because like it's very British. Like some of these models are very like Discworld-ish, very goofy looking Gary Chalk art from their 80s.
Yeah.
So, but I'm sure there's got to be Discworld models somewhere, right?
There's got to be. So Rob, I had a question for you. So at the start, you said I'm wrong about Kingdoms of Men. So one, what's your feedback on the episode? And two, you said I'm wrong about Kingdoms of Men. So let's go there.
Yeah. So you were right on everything. I thought you were brave. So all right, I am a person that, as long as the fluff backs you up, that's fine. So like the fact that we can say, hey, the Imperial Dwarves have been conquered by their free cousins. Awesome. I love it. I love the underdog coming back and kicking someone's ass. The elf one, very risque. That was a very risky call to say I'm not going to have
controversial.
Yeah.
Controversial.
Now, why are you wrong about Rhodia versus Kingdoms Men? Basically, Rhodia is a joke. It's always been a joke. It's been a joke from the beginning. It is a joke to GW about the Empire. Twin comets bang, the Celestians in the form of two comets hit in the sky, come crashing to Earth. There's a twin-tailed comet. Like they literally say that in the fluff. So like that's the kind of stuff that I would rather not be in our background story. Like the less we rely on GW, the less like we grow up and we.
What if they change the story?
Well, maybe. But here's the thing: there's a lot less story to Rhodia than Kingdoms of Men. I mean, Kingdoms of Men are like 100 different nations, right? Rhodia is like 12, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think what you could easily do, like whether it's one way or the other, is you change the name and add the fluff, right? And change the name of the freaking models, like, or the units, So, give the Kingdoms of Men some flavor via their name, their backstory, as well as their unit models and descriptions.
Yeah.
Get rid of hero. Get rid of the captain. Like, give the captain a goddamn name. make him an iconic character in the story because he's got cool rules. Yeah. Do you agree with that?
Yeah. Yeah. This is good. I was just reading this question. Let's take this question.
That's from Harry Capra.
Yeah.
Is this the?
Yeah. To be fair, Harry, if you're breaking the law, I'm not with you. Like if you're breaking the law, I don't care. I mean, people say GW is predatory. Nobody's making people buy models from GW. I don't buy models from GW.
And while their businesses practices might be predatory, they're not illegal, right? Or they certainly haven't been proved to be illegal. So I'm a believer of, yes, you've got someone who's dominating the market, and yes, they use their position in that market to continue to dominate.
Well,
but the way I rail against that is I don't buy their models, but I'm certainly not, well, I won't regularly. I'm not going to say I'd never buy a recast or something, but I will not deliberately print something that looks like that because I just don't think that's right.
To be fair, they're not dominating the market though. If you look at the hobby gaming space, 40K makes a lot of money, but there's some bigger players, whether you're talking about cards or not, but like even Fantasy Flight money wise is outpacing GW. So Song of Ice and Fire is kicking on their heels, I don't know.
They're being chipped away at slightly, right?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, they're being chipped away at, but it's why their models cost so much because they can sell fewer models and maintain their profit margins, right? So,
I mean, at some point it'll catch up with them, right? At some point, law of diminishing return. Like at some point, people are not going to keep paying I keep saying this, but at some point, someone's not going to want to pay $160 for a plastic model.
No, and they are exactly the type of models that will not stand up to the resin printing revolution, right? Because you can print excellent models, and certainly will be able to sooner. For much cheaper. Yeah. This is interesting from Paige. I don't buy this at all because just because something has been written before doesn't mean it can't change. And we've seen Mantic have a willingness to advance the storyline.
Yeah.
We've seen Mantic have a complete. I don't buy that at all. It is very easy to change the course of the storyline by writing some new fluff. So, and realistically, what have the Imperial Dwarves got? They've got Golok being a bit of a knob, and ruling and doing like the Free Dwarves have had a fair bit written about them as well. The only reason that I think that the Free Dwarves should survive is because if Mantic want to put their own spin on things, they're the army that it's more easily able to do rather than just being a generic dwarf army, which the Imperial Dwarves currently is.
Yes. Follow up from which one do you want to take?
I assume it's Harry. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'll be honest with you. Like without 40K, my store's not staying open. So, I'm not buying 40K, but it's giving me a place to play.
Yeah. And that last point he makes there is we just agreed with that. Being chipped away at, yes, is a good thing. Yeah, but not through like resale of their IP in a cheaper way. They should be
make better models,
like qualities producing quality. Exactly.
Make better models that are high quality, and sometimes Mantic does that. Sometimes they don't. Right? Like, yeah.
I know. I know what. So I mistook Paige here, but you never know, Paige. You never know. They could, and I don't think their Vanguard Dwarves are that necessarily that hard to shift towards a new look. Yep, and you never know.
The thing is, though, I to what you were trying to do last week, though, I think you were trying to convey like, how does Mantic put in more of their own spin on it, right? And going the traditional Lord of the Rings, heavily armored dwarves under the mountain, route is probably not the way if you want to really make a unique army. Now, I don't know that a free dwarf army is that unique either. I mean, I'm sure there's people can tell me. I'm sure there's examples of that, right? Free range dwarves that live above the mountain and don't follow maybe the same stereotypes.
Exactly. This is the thing, right? We're still looking about an army that we would imagine would span across Mantica, right? So they're not all going to look the same. But I'd be very surprised if some point the Mantic Dwarf line doesn't get a refresh, because we have seen Vanguard is a totally different look to their current squat mass-produced ones, and that line is quite old now. So I wouldn't be surprised if in the next 2-3 years it gets a refresh. Yeah, and that would be a perfect opportunity to do something different.
Let me ask you this. And maybe we'll ask the people watching. When models get refreshed, does that piss you off? Like, because they have models that they don't have anything for? Like, you're like, oh, I have nothing here. Like, I have nothing to fill this void. And you're like, you can use that resource to, I don't know.
It kind of does. But that's like one of the real big reasons that I think they should embrace STLs, because they could just go, bang, here's the rest of your Trident Realms model. We're not.
Now, I know that's something that Harry Capper would get behind. Hari would get behind. If Mantic sold STLs, he would be the first person behind Jefferson to have the fully Mantic STL army.
I would totally be on their Patreon straight away, just from a point of view of supporting them doing it.
Yeah.
Right. And I think you'd get a couple of hundred people doing that just to support them doing it. So automatically 200 people at $10 a month, that's $2,000 a month straight up,
Yeah.
I think Tim Lonis would be
Tim Lonis from War Chest Creations.
Yeah.
You're right.
But that's where I would start with, like I said in the episode, I would start their experience and dabble in it by doing something completely different that they haven't got, like the herd. And I would use it to dabble with releasing models to fill in other lines. Like, give me a goddamn Trident King, please. And like that has, I mean, it's not very good in game, right? Not as good as it could be. But well, I think, Mark, we're not talking about exclusive STLs. We're talking about, that they might still choose to print some in resin, but you will just have to pay a premium as you currently do, because we're paying a lot of money for them to resin print, for them to resin mold their own models. And just the same, you can still buy the STL and give it to someone that has a printer and get them to print it for you. That person's just not allowed to use that to print for other people as well.
Yeah, so and Felix got a good point. And, for those, I'm going to plug a podcast here. It's called Precinct Omega. The gentleman is a rules author, and he writes Horizon Wars, is I think his big game. And if you go look at Precinct Omega, the podcast, and look back, he's got an excellent couple episodes on 3D printing, specifically how it would impact the big players like GW and the smaller players like Infinity. Excellent, well thought, articulated arguments. So I would highly recommend, if you're interested in that discussion, go check it out. Well,
and what I haven't said anything to the community about is I actually did a presentation on it for Mantic that Peram and I worked on. And yes, I realize there's an issue with some of the digital rights. I don't think that's enough to hold back the market. So if you look at something like One Page Rules, they have 10,000 Patreons. 10,000. So they have 10,000 people paying $10 a month. That's good coin, and I think that outweighs, a few people sharing them amongst each other.
I think what you're saying, though, you got to get to that scale. At the beginning, you're not having it, right? Like,
well, let's be honest. If they produce what they're currently producing in STL form, no one will buy it anyway. So, except for, that's unfair.
I know what you mean. If they produce like what they're capable of, right? What they're capable of, like some of the new Lizardman stuff, that'll sell. But if you've got the old elves, probably not.
Yeah. Or this is a point, like they could look down the path of merchant tier Patreons, which allows people to print and buy. Or, as Mark is saying, you go, Privateer Press is a little bit different. I don't think Privateer Press are actually printing in-house. What they're doing is they're licensing, I think Peram said, people in different countries to print for them so that there's no transport. So they license people, and then so obviously those people take a cut for printing. Oh, here's our slick fade boy.
Hey, what's up?
Let's check the fade. You look like you're just straight up out of the Backstreet Boys.
Yeah. How you guys
Give us a rendition. Backstreet's back.
Oh.
Go.
Backstreet's back. Hey, they're coming to town, by the way. They're coming to Memphis, so anybody in town.
Are you kidding?
No. So, long story short, I've got a couple employees that I brought in for training. One from Massachusetts, one from Detroit. And we put them up at the Westin, which is across from the FedEx Forum downtown. And as I dropped them off for dinner on Friday night, it said Backstreet Boys in concert, and like I was like, oh my gosh,
Nice.
so funny, so funny.
Mm.
Yeah, and this is a good comment though. When we're talking about this, you know. All right, let's go to this comment first, for sure. 66% sexier.
66% of the time,
more than
it
two of
works
us.
every time.
Yeah. So,
Yeah,
but this is a
that's
very
whole lot of
important
sex.
thing too. Is, and I think we have the community to support it, right?
Yeah.
You've got to
Well,
trust them to not be a bunch of thieves, right?
Well, what
'Cause-
I would say about that is Mantic already trusts the community. They put the hands of the game in volunteers,
That's true.
which is the RC. You know, so I don't think Mantic has a problem trusting the community in terms of STLs.
Yeah. You know, I don't know if they want to go down that route. Do they pick an army that's not real popular, maybe like Herd or something like
That's what
that?
I think. I think
Yeah.
it'd be perfect test and let them do something with their own IP.
And if they
Not
don't like
Beastman.
it, they just kill the army.
Yep.
cut it from the book. Done. It's no
Yeah, exactly.
longer exists.
What are you
Or
guys?
you
What are you
can-
guys talking about?
3D
Oh, so
models.
sorry, we're back on STLs. We somehow got onto
Oh, okay.
STLs. I can't remember
Got it.
how.
We've been all over
So
the place tonight, Jeremy.
Mantic
All over
joining
the
the STL train, basically, is what you're talking about.
Yep.
Yeah, I honestly can't remember how we got onto it. Oh, because we were talking about
Well,
Rob
GW.
asked. Yeah, we had a bit of GW chat, and then like, do you get annoyed when they release new models without filling in backlines?
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And that does
do you get
kind of
annoyed when they do that, Jeremy?
I don't annoy it, but it burns me a little bit.
When it's
I'll be
one of my
honest.
armies, yes, but when it's not, not at all. So, like, when it's not my army, I want to see the new stuff. You know what I mean? But it is frustrating when you're trying to, you know, especially in GW because they're more particular about the models you use. You know, maybe not as much as Kings because you can use other things.
Well, that's what's interesting is I don't think it has anything to do with I mean, I know that GW and other companies have like specific rules about using their models in their events or events that are supported by their company. It's the communities that have developed around them that are really the gatekeepers. Like, I don't see that in Kings of War. I don't see us being like that. Like locally, you bring a proxy model to an Infinity game at our store, they're throwing your ass out. They're like, no, we don't do it.
Well, like in GW stores, right? You can't play in GW stores with other models. You know.
Right.
Yeah, but the reality is who plays in GW stores?
Some
Like,
people
most-
actually do. You'd be surprised.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm doing based on Australia. In Australia, they're literally like as big as my office, you know, and there's a room for about 1, maybe 2 tables.
Yeah.
You know, and so I think people just don't. They play in other stores or they play at home.
Sure.
So and I'm with Rob. I don't think. Well, I think it varies depending on communities. I don't think many communities do enforce model. Maybe Infinity at your store, Rob, but I think on average, I think agnosticism is bigger than what we think. You know.
Yeah. Well, I will say, like at our store, they've really knuckled down on what you can at a GW tournament, which can and which can't bring in the store. And it's not so much. It's not so much about the affected GW. It's more like you didn't buy anything for me. You know what I mean?
So I have a question for you guys.
Yeah.
Where do you think the industry at large is in adjusting to, accepting, and running with 3D printing and STL files? Are we still just in the infancy as far as the effect it's going to have on the gaming community at large? Or are we starting to get into the adolescence? Or where do you think we are as far as the industry side of the real impact of 3D printing?
I think you have seen a lot of companies pivot already. So we're definitely in the adolescent. I don't think, and I think the problem for companies like Mantic is it's not going to be a linear increase, right? We're going to see an exponential rise in quality of printing, cost of printers, things like that. You know, it is going to exponentially improve. So I would say we're out of the infancy phase.
And do you guys like do you like the membership model of where you pay, like I pay $19.95 a month to Creature Fusion Lab and I get everything they have? Or do you think that I'm talking from, you're running the business, right? As Mantic, do you charge a monthly fee and you get 100% everything?
100% you do.
I think you do, right? I think
subscription models
make
work.
more money that way.
Yeah, you're going to
It's
make
like,
more money, right?
Just give me a little bit more. we're going to give you all of the great stuff on the buffet. Just come on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think
there
you go
is
subscription.
a reason that every big software company in the world has gone to it, right? And yes, I know it's a total different industry, but the thing is you get people continually paying for it, you know, and you've got not just software, entertainment is delivering it that way in terms of Netflix, Prime,
Yeah.
all these things, you know. Subscription models work, and they work, one, because if you deliver enough new content, they keep people engaged. Two, people forget they've got them, particularly if it's at $10 a month, you know. So you often just get people leaving it there. They go, oh, it's no big deal, I'll keep supporting that. I just think it works. I would absolutely do subscription base as long as they produce quality. And I don't think their current design team can do that.
And quality
Whoa.
around the files themselves.
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
Totally. The files themselves. I mean, and they obviously need to test that they can be printed. But
Well,
to me, the current design team is too hit and miss.
Well,
You've
here's the
got
thing.
awesome ranges
I would
like the
argue, though, Matt.
Halflings, and then you got that dog shrine from RFO.
But I would
you know?
argue that part of it is, first of all, the designers, the sculptors aren't the ones making the decisions, right? They have someone doing design sketches.
It's
but-
the design, not the
yeah,
sculptors. Yes.
But the thing is, if you're making models to resin cast, you can't do things that some of the one-page rules can do with undercuts and that, like. So what I'm saying is, I think we have to. They don't have a fair shot right now. Like, let's, to your point, pick an army, make some kick-ass models with the specific intent that these will be 3D printed, and see what you can do, right? And then we judge them based on that.
And that's the thing. They could actually, in the future, pivot away from molds and just be printing the models themselves, right? You know, I can't remember what bloody planet name it is that I got from Elegoo that's on its way. It can pretty much
Saturn.
It could, yeah, I think it's the Saturn or the Jupiter. I've got both, but like it could print almost 1,500 points in one go. Like as long as it turns out, obviously, but like, so there is. Future movement will mean that we probably won't see resin casting. They will just print.
So if you want to buy it direct from Mantic, you would just buy it resin printed. You'd be buying a resin print, basically.
Well,
I think
option.
There's always going to be a population, right, that doesn't want to print their own miniatures. Yeah. I strongly believe that. No matter how popular resin printing becomes, there's still going to be the group of people who are just like, even people who love to paint, they're just like, I don't have room for resin. It's not a hobby I want to do. So I think that, having that population in mind too, but it's something that I think all companies who make miniatures need to think about. How are they going to handle being with this space? Because it's something you can't ignore. I mean, every year it seems like more and more people are printing stuff.
Well, when I did that presentation for Manning, I did that poll in our page, obviously, which only has what do we got?
1,200
members?
1,200.
Yeah, 1,200. Yeah. And within the first 24 hours, and so what I said to Mantic was, our group is pro Mantic and pro Kings of War, right? And 70% of those people said they've got at least some resin printed miniatures in their army. So if you take that to a wider base that's probably a little bit less pro Mantic, that might even increase. So people are doing it anyway. So if you don't embrace it, you get left behind.
Yeah, and I imagine that there's a lot of people who 3D print models who play Kings of War that if Mantic released STLs for $15 a month or whatever, they would gladly pay that money as I'm helping support the company that makes the game system I love. Now I have an opportunity to do that since I only print models or whatever the case is. So it seems to me they wouldn't be losing anyone if they got into that market, right? They would only be gaining people.
Yeah, I agree.
Interesting topic.
Yeah, and the thing is there will be enough that if you buy the STL yourself and so this is the thing, it's a dual market, right? You've got the Patreon market, but then every one of those Patreon people, because Patreon only gives you access to future, right? It doesn't give you access to past. If it gives you the access to past, it's with a discount code to buy the individual STLs. So you have a dual market that you can sell anything that's come before to people that are new just with a discount code. So there's there's multiple ways to sell your product.
Interesting. Because I think this is all under the umbrella in the end is what we want Mantic to succeed, right? We love this game. It's, so it's all of like brainstorming, ways to help, support
100%.
them. And right.
100%. Yeah, it's got nothing to do with like I just want to resin print all my models. It's that like I love Kings of War
Yeah.
and I love Mantic, and my fear is if they don't pivot, they're as Perham and I had discussed, they're at a size where they could fail.
Yeah, they should at least have a really legitimate like exploratory committee, right? You know, they should have some internal resources thinking about this.
Here's a question. Do you think it's because of they're in peril because of the size? Because there's bigger companies that aren't doing it, right? So Cool Mini or not.
Yeah, they're the
Fantasy
wrong
Flight,
size.
GW.
100%.
Yeah, it's because they're small. Is why you're more.
Yeah, and they're playing in a tough market. Let's. I mean, I don't have any access to any of their financials, but my thought would be until Firefight, Kings of War has probably been their most successful game, right? But Mass Battle Fantasy is niche, so what they rely on is these board games IP, right? And the best one they'll probably ever have in The Walking Dead has ended.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, Hellboy was pretty good too, but again, with Embracer Group buying Dark Horse, what's the future hold for that? So
and you know, you look at other shows that might have huge IP that they can do, and they might not necessarily fit in the fantasy space. You know, so
Umbrella Academy.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah,
Another one like it's Bizarro, dude. You got a gorilla. You've got it's just crazy.
Yep. So I think why their size makes them vulnerable is because they can't punch out enough volume under their current model. They haven't got enough money to release 3 armies a year or 4 armies a year to produce the models they need to produce to keep up. They haven't got enough money or probably the people power. So, you know, what can you do? You can pivot.
Because what I'm seeing previously in a sort of model agnostic, what I saw more in the beginning of Kings of War, so this is 2016, 2017, I saw more GW models, right? GW models
100%.
being using. But now what I'm seeing more, I'm seeing non-Mantic models, but I'm seeing more and more 3D printed non-Mantic models. It's almost where it was maybe, you know, of the non-Mantic models being used previously, it was like 90% GW and 10% printed. I think that GW is going down and down and down, and 3D printed is going
part
up
of it
and
is
up
they
and
don't
up.
make a lot of those models, right? They've stopped making a lot of those, like Tomb King.
So I'm still seeing, it still feels to me roughly the same percentage of Mantic to non-Mantic armies, maybe a little bit more Mantic, but it's what the non-Mantic is that's the interesting thing to me. That I've seen the shift away from just GW stuff to 3D printed to all the wackadoo, really individualistic stuff.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point, and that's where the creative space is lying, right? The creative space is relying with designers who want to do something cool, right? And that's the beauty of it. Like, let's just say they produce Gigas in a STL form, right? Suddenly, compared to, or actually a better thing would be go back and do their Snow Trolls, who are currently all got that one stupid pose. Release it in 4 different poses because people can print it themselves, right? And then all of a sudden, the whole unit looks way better. Yep, but you don't have the cost of having to have 4 different Snow Troll molds.
Yeah. Mark brings up a point. You know, the reality is, Mark, people still love it. It's still one of the. I mean, they're still making money hand over fist. So.
I mean, 40K is still the most popular game by far. I mean, beyond whatever. You know, they're making moolah. But I mean, I think Firefight has shown that that market is so popular that there is space for people to want to play a sci-fi skirmish game that's not 40K. But yeah.
Yeah, Harry brings up something that's kind of true. They do still sell. So when they originally did their Dragon Empire or their Yokai army, they did produce it off the Kickstarter in resin models, and now they do sell a whole bunch of those as STLs. But you're right, some of the other stuff like Ogres, they don't. But that's probably because, like Rob said with Westphalia at the start, they were probably traditionally sculpted, not digitally sculpted. Whereas now with digital sculpting, there's no reason really not to produce it as an STL.
I mean, that's a good question. Do we know how Mantic has sculpts their models?
They sculpted 3D. There's 3D.
Now it's 3D. 100%.
Now it's 3D. Okay.
Yeah, when they first started, they were traditionally sculpted.
Now, if a model is sculpted, 3D sculpted, is there a heavy infrastructure cost to transfer that 3D sculpt into a sellable STL? I'm just not super familiar with that space.
That bit I don't actually know.
Okay.
I
The
can't
answer's
imagine
no.
it would be much.
If
Yeah,
you if you
certainly
wanted to
not
take you could if you had a traditionally sculpted model sculpted by hand, you could actually use a 3D scanner and scan it in and build a model out of it, but that's a lot more work. But a 3D model should be able to go ahead.
Especially if it's someone whose job it is, right? So there'll be someone whose job that goes, I look at that model and I know where I need to pull it apart to print it in bits and support, good to go. Do a couple of tests.
Yeah. So it's almost I wonder if they would then need like a czar. Do you think that would be like a new position? They would want like their 3D printing senior vice president of 3D printing and STLs?
I think they need to talk to someone that knows the space.
That's what I mean, right? We would want someone knowledgeable in that.
Which
field.
is not someone like me, like I just dabble, but it's someone like your J. Jefferson Thacker Perham, someone that has done it for other companies, that knows the space, that is really passionate about it.
And how did you feel when you were talking to them? How, as far as their curiosity or openness around this space?
Oh, they're curious, but it's not like they're not talking about it, right? Sure. It's I think there had been internal discussions, and for the record, it wasn't live, it was recorded, so it's not, I didn't get any real-time feedback.
Live feedback, right?
So, and I think it's difficult for them because in some ways when someone comes in and does that, you're kind of telling them, I don't think you're running your business right, so
sure.
It can hit you in the feels a little bit, and particularly when then you also slam on the design a little bit. That's gonna, hit you in the feels.
And that's another thing. I mean, granted, even the models that you may say I don't love, they're still designed way better than I could ever design a model. So it's like, you know what I mean? You're not trying to slag anyone off.
No, but
you're trying to be realistic, right?
Yeah, and the fact is, they're not competitive.
Yeah.
Yeah, in terms of like the quality of the models.
Well, I would use the word inconsistent. There are models that are amazing, right?
I mean, of the last 3 releases, I mean, I know a lot of people have hated on them. Maybe, I don't know why, but I think of Riftforge Orcs, Empire of Dust, and Halflings, 2 of the 3 are really solid.
Well,
I think
so. Look, Empire of Dust, people don't like it because they've chosen to feed back into the Tomb King look, right? That's they didn't take it their own direction. They I think they handicapped themselves. So, and that's okay because they're hoping the Tomb King players are buying them.
Yeah, and this is an interesting comment from Tom. I kind of agree. They shouldn't take the business advice. They should absolutely do their own modeling, right? But there are people in the community that have the business knowledge. So if you don't have it, you should seek it. But by the same token, the community needs to tell Mantic what they want and what they are seeing. And I think if the community cares about the company that's producing their models, then yes, they absolutely should say. And Mantic have a good track record of listening to feedback. Remember the bloody flying arsehole they were going to release
for Armada?
For Armada? They ditched that.
Now it's a blimp.
Yeah. Like you could argue that the feedback on that is business advice. Please don't produce it, right? And they didn't. Yeah.
Interesting.
I'm gonna have to run.
Yeah. Great talk, guys.
Yep.
Continue this on. I mean, I know there's a lot of people that are all about printing.
Sorry, I was late, but I'm trying to get back into shape here a little bit. So I was at the El Jimmo.
Well, are you a pair right now? The shape you're in?
Yeah. Show us your freshly cut guns after a few bicep curls.
I can't. I was doing legs today. I'll send you a picture of my calves later.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, get you.
Hot.
Yeah.
So hot.
I'm at like 1% Dan Kamek right now, so I got to get up to like 3 months is 50% Dan Kamek is my goal, so that we'll see how it goes. But
I love you,
awesome.
Felix. Yeah. All right, guys.
Love you, Felix.
Thanks. Keep the discussion rolling.
Great discussion.
We'll talk to you guys soon.
Okay, see you guys.
Bye.